Alright, don't select special cop. There we go. Oh, I guess I'm already live. I'll just... Okay, I'm on. Okay. Hello, everybody. I am SuperViperT302. This is Broken Kart 64. I'm basically just going to be going through all 16 of these tracks on 150cc, and everything is fair game, glitch or otherwise, so you're going to get to see some interesting ways I'm going to be completing some of these tracks, and Peach won the character bid war, so I'll be using her. Anyways, let's just go ahead. I assume we're ready for a countdown, so I'll just go ahead and get started in 3, 2, 1, video games. So, funnily enough, the fact that Peach won the character bid war means I actually can't do a pretty cool shortcut right at the start here. So if I had Yoshi or Toad as the character selected, DK would have been right in front of me, and so off of that star boost, I could have actually done a CPU jump off of DK's head and flown over the wall, which would have placed me in this tunnel down below and saves about 12 or 13 seconds, so that's kind of an unfortunate time loss I have to consider right at the start of the run. So there are a bunch of shortcuts used in this run, but for the most part, the driving in this game is just the important part, where you are constantly drifting and doing these mini turbos where you're just oscillating the control stick back and forth at various intervals in order to build up that charge and gain that small burst of speed, and that's going to be what I'm going to be doing pretty much throughout the entire run whenever I need to be driving. It's kind of the key mechanic to going fast, and it's really, really hard to optimize because you have to obviously be good with the lines, and it's very frame dependent. It's a 7-phase process to get a mini turbocharge in this game. So that item block I got on the second lap always has a blue shell, and I'm holding onto it for something I'm about to attempt at the start of the lap 3 here. Nice. So that's kind of what I would have gone for with the CPU jump at the start of lap 1. So obviously the blue shell aims for whoever's in first place, but because I was in first place, it hit me and allowed me to tumble over that wall and land in that tunnel below again. So that saves like 13 seconds or so. So yeah, a time in around the low 140s, like a 141 or 142, is what you would get in no skips for on average. So yeah, obviously that skip saves a good chunk of time, and a majority of these tracks have those unintended shortcuts. Unfortunately, Moo Moo Farm does not, because of its rather simplistic design. So, really the only thing to worry about in this track are the moles, which are RNG dependent, so I'm just going to be kind of staying away from them as much as possible. So I'll use this track to sort of go over the core mechanics of this game. I already went over mini turbos. First thing I want to go over is character selection. So you're probably wondering why the character bid war was only between Yoshi, Toad, and Peach. That's because those 3 characters are all the lightweight characters, and they all tie for having the fastest top speed. So they're all the most optimal to use for driving. The only major differences is that Toad is slightly lighter than Yoshi and Peach, which only matters when interacting with other characters. Also, Yoshi is the quickest to select off the kart menu, so he's usually who players of this game will use whenever they're running this game. Another thing to note is one thing that makes 150cc different from time trials in terms of RNG is the fact that you have items to worry about. So there is an item table in the game's memory that has percentages for any item you can get in any place. So for example, a mushroom is a 10% chance in first place. And obviously I can't really realistically manipulate what item I will get when, so if I need a specific item, I have to increase my odds at getting the item to as high as I can get it. Another thing to worry about is the CPUs. They rubber band in this game, but basically if they're off screen, physics stop applying to them. So they're constantly in a boost state when they're off screen, and they can also drive through walls, which doesn't happen often, but it's hilarious when it does. So Koopa Troopa Beach, again, doesn't necessarily have anything that's qualified as a skip. By the way, going around the left side of that rock is faster. But it does have a built-in shortcut, which is allowed in the no skips category, which is coming up right here. It's just simply just jump into the tunnel. And obviously that's allowed since it was programmed into the track. In no skips runs also, you can do this glitch here that I'm about to attempt. So, you can't normally get triple red shells in first place.
If I can...
In fact, you can't. That's the only place you can't get them in. But if you notice in the lower left-hand corner, I went into 8th place for a few frames, and that's because there's mismapped polygons to the right of the finish line there that mistakenly think you're behind by a lap. And if you activate an item while you're on those polygons, you can get an item from a place that's farther back. So in that case, I got triple red shells. Optimally, you want like a speed item, like a star or a golden mushroom. That's actually like the best case scenario right there. Again, you can't get a star in first place normally. And that glitch does exist on other courses, but it's easiest to utilize here. You saw me hit a banana earlier and almost spin out. I was able to save myself by just mashing B. If you slow down when you're about to spin out, you can prevent yourself from spinning out. That's actually a bit of a good thing to keep in mind when you're playing in 150cc, because you can actually spin yourself out in 150cc. So next up is Calamari Desert. Get your Blessed RNGs out, because this is the first track in the run where I'm going to want a specific item. So I'm going to head to this first set of item boxes here, and I'm going to grab this one and backtrack into 8th place, and I'm hoping for a star. That's not a star. That is also not a star. So a star is the highest probability item you can get in 8th place, and you also have the highest probability of getting it in 8th place, but there are times when the game just decides it doesn't want to give you what you want. Okay. I could do something with the red shell, but I don't want to. Alright, there we go. That took a few more tries than I would have liked. So what I'm going to do with this star is actually a shortcut that was programmed into the game. But what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to be driving through the train tracks to my left, and then as you cross by the finish line, activate the star, and it advances you forward a lap. But Nintendo, as you're about to realize, they're really, really good at making driving games. So they, of course, figured, why would anybody, if they're going to use this shortcut, want to drive in through the other side of the train tracks? So they didn't account for you doing this. So I'm going to just drive through the train tracks, wait for Kichi to tell me to turn around, activate the star, turn back around, and I just skipped a lap. Good game, 10 out of 10. Okay, so I just dodged a lightning there. So CPUs in this game, they can pick up shells, but they can never use shells. And the 8th place CPU has a 1% chance of getting a lightning. So it can happen that I'll get lightning during this run, but it's usually pretty rare. And we're coming up on the final lap of this cup here, so I am actually going to reset the console, because that just skips the trophy ceremony at the end. Gotta remember to select that character. So now we're heading on to Flower Cup. So Toad's Turnpike has one of the harder shortcuts for me. So if I go over estimate, this track is probably going to be Y. It's kind of confusing to watch as well. Alright, so I was trying to get out of bounds there. Okay. So what I did there might look kind of confusing. Basically, when you go out of bounds, after Kichi places you up and picks you up and places you back down, while he's still on the screen, he's actually unable to pick you up again. So basically, I just kind of get to the out of bounds section again before he leaves the screen, and that allows me to have free roam out of bounds, and so I can just jump from the higher level to the lower level by doing that. I might have to do that again. Oh, nice, I know. So, if you do that first shortcut in a way where you stay above the road as you're jumping from the higher level to the lower level, it, for really dumb reasons nobody understands, it breaks the checkpoint system, to where if you just drive a little ways past the finish line and then jump out of bounds, it just immediately warps you halfway across the track. And funnily enough, that doesn't actually work on the Japanese 1.0 version of the game, so they fixed something that broke this in later versions of the game. Yeah, I just drove 2 feet past the finish line and jumped out of bounds, and now I'm halfway across the track. So, the lineup to get that wrong warp to work, however, is kind of precise, so sometimes you will have to do that first shortcut again, which is why I played it a little bit safe. I didn't think my lineup looked good on lap 1. And just so you know, these cars are on cycles, but I never drive this track the same way anytime, 2 times in a row, so I never memorize them. That was a pretty good Toad's Turnpike, though. What's the chance of you getting hit by a red or blue shell? None, because I said earlier, CPUs can pick up shells, but they will never throw shells. So if I ever get hit by a shell, it's one that I shot out. And usually I'm not going to fire shells at myself. So Frappe Snowland has probably the easiest shortcut in the entire game. You could literally whip out the game and try it for yourself and impress your friends. All you gotta do is drive backwards to the bridge here, and then jump from the bridge to the snow without touching the road, and then cross the finish line and go out of bounds. And it didn't work. I didn't drive from the bridge to the road properly. Jinxed myself. So this should work. So basically, when you cross the finish line, normally the game obviously adds a lap to your progress, and when you go back across it, the game subtracts the lap. But by manipulating it so that, like, he just places me down in front of the road, and it's hard to explain. Basically, he places me down behind the point where the game would subtract a lap from me.
Yeah, Peaches got it.
And so that's basically what I'm doing with that shortcut. And as you can see, I finished all 3 laps faster than any of the CPUs could finish one. So even though I kind of messed it up on lap 1 because I was playing it a little bit, I was kind of trying to be a little bit too fast with it. It's, again, a really, really easy shortcut. This level, on the other hand, is the mid-game run-ender of this category. So this will be the first of 2 tracks where I'll be attempting wall jumps, which there are certain types of slanted walls in this game where if you approach them with the right speed and angle, and then press R the frame before you hit them, you can actually get a wall jump. But it's really, really precise. Okay, I got it there. So that's frame perfect. This game runs at 30 FPS, and sometimes it can actually be impossible, because your speed can be so high that there's no intermediate frame where you're able to make the jump. So if I hit the wall and tumble when attempting one of those wall jumps, then I could have timed it right, but my speed was just too high, and it wasn't meant to be. Alright, that time I just hit a bad spot on the wall. And there is a backup jump right here. That's slightly easier, but still pretty annoying. And yeah, there is the weather tank lap skip, but that's not really RTA viable. And it's harder than 150cc, because you go so much faster. So yeah, this track is super easy to just get 0 framed on all these wall jumps over and over again. Wow, 2 for 3. That's actually really good. Don't worry, there'll be a chance for you to see some 0 frame action later in the run. But those jumps do skip a huge portion of the track, so it's really good to get them, but unfortunately it's rare that you get them more than once in a run. So next up is Mario Raceway. This track I will most likely be driving non-shortcut, because I'm not very good at either of the other 2 shortcuts. So there is a lap skip involving red shells, but I've never been able to pull it off consistently. So I actually do have a mushroom. I'm going to use this for a shroom spot, but if I happen to get another mushroom, I will attempt a shortcut that I'm not very good at and get like once in a blue moon, but it's a marathon, I might as well show it off. And again, mushrooms, we know like mushrooms in first place are a 10% chance, so the odds of me getting one are kind of slim. Now earlier I said that CPUs, they can't throw shells, but they will drop a lot of bananas and fake item boxes. So they tend to place them in the worst possible spots too, which is annoying. Although you can manipulate that, you can mitigate that by getting a boo, because a boo does give you those invincibility frames. And in Grand Prix mode, a boo acts exactly like a normal item box. You're not stealing items from other CPUs, except it just has a 20% chance of giving you nothing. In Versus mode, boos do actually steal items from other CPUs, but they don't in Grand Prix mode. And obviously cutting across grass or cutting corners like this is not qualified as a skill. And that's it for Flower Cup.
Mario Kart Grand Prix.
So next we're going to Star Cup, and we're going to immediately start with Wario Stadium. This is normally the second longest track in the game, but with skips it can be one of the shortest, depending on how nice the game wants to be to you. So, very well known shortcut, you can just jump over this first wall right here. What's probably not as well known is you can jump right back over. Again, frame perfect in a 30 FPS, and it can sometimes be impossible. Alright, that was just a really bad attempt. It's really easy to get here, and then you just get zero framed like that over and over again. By the way, I'm able to accelerate from rest by triple tapping the A button, which, because I'm playing as a lightweight character, is a lot easier to utilize. Alright, that was actually a really good Wario Stadium. Anything in the 30s is exceptionally good for a no reset. Just for reference, you can finish that track in under 20 seconds, so my average is usually in the 40s or low 50s, so that's really, really good. So Sherbet Land, we're going to be taking a bit of a break from shortcuts here. There aren't any in this run that can be pulled off by a human. If you've watched Drew Weatherton's All Cups task, which if you haven't, you should watch that immediately after this run. And then you'll probably see that task do a bunch of like crazy CPU jumps and lap skips. Obviously, I cannot reasonably predict where the CPUs are going to be, so I'm not going to be doing any of that. So I'm just going to be kind of driving this track straight. There's not a whole lot to it other than just doing these corner cuts. The penguins are on cycles, so I'll have if I don't make any huge mistakes, I should have an idea of where they're going to be on each lap. I don't want to fall into the water because then you turn into a frozen ice cube and it takes a couple extra seconds to break out of it after being picked up. And I also just don't want to run into any penguins head on because you spin out and that usually costs about 3 seconds. Which, in a game like this, can be pretty annoying. And it's also easy for, like, a banana to be placed right in front of where you're supposed to do a corner cut, and you just slide into the water. That was really good. I could not have planned that any better. That penguin's kind of in a really bad position usually at the start of lap 3, so I couldn't really do much about that. But fortunately that happened on lap. Fortunately, the CPUs were pretty far behind me, so this isn't too bad. If you don't finish a race in the top 4, you actually have to redo the race, and that's only ever happened to me once in a marathon, so let's keep it like that. But I'm in first place, and I'm at the end of lap 3, so unless something happens right here, I should be good. One thing I haven't explained yet is these point screens and how I'm going through them so quickly. Basically, I'm just holding start and mashing A. Holding start counts down the points quicker, and pressing A advances the screens quicker. Royal Raceway has one pretty big shortcut that I can do on all 3 laps. And unlike some of the other ones, it's not impossibly difficult. So basically, right after this turn here, I'm going to jump across the river and try to hit a specific part of the wall. So, you see a polygon line on that wall there. You want to hit just to the right of that polygon line, and it causes the game to think you attempted that huge jump from the ramp and missed for some really bizarre reason. So, it just places you right back at the ramp, and that saves a good, like, 14 seconds per lap. So I'll be going for that on all 3 laps. For instance, yeah, I would optimally be finishing laps in like 48 or 49 seconds without that shortcut, but with that shortcut I save a lot of time. It's a little bit hard to do without a setup though. So I'm actually looking for the word poomp whenever I hit that wall. If I don't see poomp, it probably didn't work. So keep an eye out for that. There is a secondary shortcut you can do that I'm just not going to bother with because I'm not very good at it and it's not worth it from my skill level. Where once you reach that ramp, you can actually sort of jump off to the left and hit the far wall and make like each place you get around the last corner. It saves literally like half a second and loses like 10 if you fail it, and it's really stupidly difficult, so I don't bother with it. Alright, got that shortcut 3 for 3. That's pretty good. So yeah, the other shortcut is right here. You would just veer off to the left. I'm not going to bother attempting it. And in case you're wondering, yes, you can drive over to the castle. But obviously there's no reason to do that in an all cups run, so I'm not going to do it. Yeah, that track's pretty straightforward in all cups runs. You just do that shortcut 3 times. As you can see, I got roughly the same lap time. I got 35 seconds on all 3 laps. So the last track of Star Cup is going to be Bowser's Castle. I will keep your eyes open for Marty. He's never been let out of his jail cell, but if you look hard enough, you'll find him behind bars. This level also does not have any shortcuts that are reasonable for humans to do, so I'm just going to be driving this level non-shortcut. These thwomps are all on cycles, so the problem is, though, you're not always going to drive the same way every time because it's a really finicky course to drive through. So oftentimes those thwomps are going to be on different cycles every time. So with those 3 womps that are coming down in that room, with the 2 that additionally try to follow you, I want to kind of see which thwomps are up and down and plan which direction to go based on that, and sometimes it can still be really difficult to pick the right way. And again, you don't want to run into a thwomp head on, and you really don't want to get squished by them. I'm holding a, so I haven't mentioned this yet, but if you're holding a item behind you like this and zooming the camera out, for some reason that actually reduces lag if you're playing on the Nintendo 64, which I am. It's not as relevant in this course, but in courses like Calamari Desert or the next course, DKs Jungle Parkway, then that can be a really big relevant factor to save some frames. But it can save a little bit of time on this track as well. Also, something I've been doing is firing green shells behind me. If you fire a green shell backwards, it can never hit you. It can hit other CPUs, but it can't hit you. So that's just something I do to make my life a little bit easier whenever I get green shells. Alright. Had to kind of make a last minute change in decision there. Thankfully it paid off. That bridge is the thinnest part of the game that doesn't have railings, by the way, and 9 out of 10 times the CPU has a banana place there. And that spin out earlier was what I was talking about. In 150cc, you can spin yourself out. And this will mark the end of Star Cup. There's only 1 cup left. And it is where runs go to die, essentially. So now we're up to the laggiest course in the game, DKs Jungle Parkway, and thankfully we're not going to be here for very long because, as is the nature with this game, we can skip there are lap skips on this track, basically. So it's pretty similar to Frappe Snowland, but taken to a bit more of extreme measures. I'm going to turn around here and kind of line myself up with some visual cues in the cave here. And this corner just doesn't exist, so I can drive through it. And the finish line extends just out of bounds, so as you can see, I cross from 8th place directly to 1st. And now I can just do that 2 more times and the race will be over. I don't actually have to land back in the cave, but it is faster. So I just gotta do that 1 more time. Right. So this is fine, because I'm still gonna skip the lap, as you can see. And again, I'm going to be holding this banana behind me through the... I can even hold this banana behind me through the point screen, which will save a lot of time and lag. So I'm just holding Z this entire time. Yeah, a track that's normally, I think, is in normally in the minute 40s, is a mere 46 seconds, and that wasn't even 100% optimal. So next up, Yoshi Valley. This track can go a variety of ways depending on what items I get here at the start. I am going to aim for triple mushrooms, but if I don't get that, there's a backup route I can do. So let's see how this goes. Wait for about 5 or 6 CPUs to pass me, and I got a blue shell. That's not triple mushrooms, so we're just going to drive forward. Alright. I got a star, so I can still do my backup route. So I'm taking the right path on Yoshi Valley, which is actually the slowest path to take without shortcuts. But for some reason, that breaks the checkpoint system to where you can just kind of do this. Okay. that only works if you take the far right path. And it's essentially a lap skip. So now I can just make my way over here. The blue shell is probably going to come and pwn me any minute now. And that hairpin jump is also not considered a shortcut. It is actually considered viable for no skips. So now that I have this star, I'm going to be able to attempt the lap skip that I would have attempted on all 3 laps if I got triple mushrooms. There's the blue shell. So I'm just going to kind of line myself up again using some visual cues on the ground. And I'm going to drive off here, jump this fence, and hit this dark line. And if you get this bounce left, that usually means you got it. And don't ask me why this works. It just skips a lap. Again, really, really quality designed video game. So, the next track, Banshee Boardwalk, is the last track to not have any shortcuts, but I am going to be keeping an eye on the CPU rankings here. That was my own blue shell. The first item I got was a blue shell, so that's why it hit me. So, I want to be keeping an eye on the CPU rankings here, because when you select your character in this game, the game selects 2 other characters at random to be your rivals. And these will be characters that sort of rubber band heavier and try better than the rest. Now, optimally, I'd want a heavyweight character as my primary rival, so either Wario, DK, or Bowser. But unfortunately, it doesn't look like I got that. It looks like I have either lightweight or middleweight. So Yoshi, Toad, and Peach are the lightweights, Mario and Luigi are middleweight, and Wario, Bowser, and DK are heavyweights. If I had a heavyweight finish in first place on this track, and then I finish in 3rd, that would allow me to do something really cool at the start of Rainbow Road, but unfortunately it doesn't look like that's going to happen. Because I didn't get the right rivals. This track in general is just really, really scary though, because bananas are basically death on this course. And again, CPUs just love to place bananas in the worst possible spots. So this track is mostly just, again, in non-tasks, you're just jumping these corners whenever possible and doing as many mini-turbos as you can. There are shortcuts you can do, again, in tasks, but I am not a series of programmed inputs being read off from an emulator, so I'm not going to bother with any of that. Alright, so unfortunately, yeah, I'm not going to get the optimal CPU RNG, so I'm just going to have to finish this race out as normal. So, now at the start of Rainbow Road, I would have done a cool CPU jump if a heavyweight had finished in 1st and I had finished in 3rd, but instead I just have to do the normal shortcut, which I'm sure you all know. And this shortcut's actually really hard to do in 150cc, because it's really easy to overshoot, so hopefully I don't mess this up. Alright, that should be good. You have to release A right before you do that jump at a specific time, otherwise you'll overshoot that jump in 150cc because you're going so fast. Yeah, that's the classic Rainbow Road shortcut right there. So now I'm in 1st place, and now I really, really want to get a green shell, because that will allow me to do something pretty neato at the end of the lap. There we go. So I'm going to hold on to this until the end of the lap. Unfortunately, though, I did not get to feed DK, so that only means I'm going to get bad RNG after this. This is a really scary track at the end of the runs, because this shortcut I'm about to do is very precise, and also RNG dependent, because you have to get the right items for it, and sometimes the game just doesn't give you them. So, this is a pretty annoying track at the end of the runs. Basically, I'm just going to attempt a lap skip with these green shells, and it's only possible with the green shells. Although you can get single or triple green shells in 1st place. So, you have a 35% chance, roughly. Alright, so there is a specific setup I need to do to get this to work consistently. Alright, so this will accomplish something similar to Frappe Snowland and DKs Jungle Parkway. So I cross the finish line and then get picked up by He2, and he places me far back enough from the finish line that I'm essentially an entire lap ahead. Like that. So now I have even more time to get another green shell and do that exact same thing again. And again, RNG has to be cooperative. And it looks like it's not going to be. There we go. Alright. There we go. So time is coming up. It's going to be when I cross the finish line for the final time, so get ready for that on my mark. Although, it looks like they're just using my timer, so I don't know. Alright. I barely choked sub 30 that run. Wow. So 30:01. That is actually a marathon PB for me by 56 seconds. Actually 55 seconds. And that's the first time I have gotten a marathon PB in this category in like 2.5 years. So that was a really solid run. Unfortunately, barely missed sub 30 because of RNG, but still really, really good. So I'll make a quick little plug here before I am taken offline. So if you want to run time trials for this game, I personally don't run time trials, but there's a very, very active community for them that you should check out, MarioKart64.com. My PB in this category, by the way, is a 29:27, and the world record is a 25:36 by Abney317, who is an amazing player at this game, and you should also check out. So that's it for Mario Kart 64, and I will throw it back on over to the host now.